Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TechGig Webinars, our endeavor to empower techies. Topic for today's session for Code Walkthrough is Coding an HTML5 layout from scratch. We are delighted to have Mr. Sandeep, Senior Web Designer and Developer at Itisbu Technology Group with us today. Sandeep is a Senior Web Designer with over 5 years of experience in user interface design and front-end development. He has an excellent drive and is an entrepreneur at heart and owns a design and development firm, designingstudios.com. He is a strong advocate for open source technology and an active member of the open source community. Gentlemen, this presentation will continue for next 45 minutes and we will take your questions after the presentation. In the meanwhile, you can post your queries through the chat pane available in the webinar software. Without further ado, I introduce you to our guest speaker, Mr. Sandeep.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, please go ahead. Actually, we can't see your screen.
Oh, really? I have already on it. Do you see my screen now?
No, not yet. It's a blank screen now.
No, I have already on it. Showing your screen, it's saying. Do you see now?
No, the screen is it's not visible.
Can you please stop and give again permissions to me?
Please click on show my screen.
Yeah, I have already clicked it. Do you see my screen now?
Yeah, it's visible now. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi friends, good evening everyone. I think the attendance list was still 31. So let us wait for a few more minutes so our friends can join in time. Meanwhile, if you have any questions about the basic standards of HTML, you can post your questions in the chat message. Okay, friends, the session will be started in a minute. Okay, friends, let us start the meeting on webinar. I still see very less people have joined, only 40. So would like to wait, or let us go with this number. Okay, friends, once again, good evening, all of you. This is Sandeep, web designer and developer from Is Technology Group Incorporation, and also a web developer at Is Designs, web designing and development company. So today we are gathered here to learn about HTML5 and what are the advantages, disadvantages, and its history, and what we can achieve from HTML5. And the title of our webinar today is Coding an HTML5 Layout from Scratch. So I hope that you people are well expertise in the older versions of HTML, that is HTML4, and also XHTML 1.0 and also 2.0. We know that HTML5 is being used by lots of people, even though it have not yet been complete even certificate by W3C, but it has gained much experience and also the usability, and more people are using the HTML5 even though it's in still development stage. So let's go to the first slide of HTML5 to know what is HTML5 and its aim, features, and its conclusion. So let's first know about what is HTML5. Simply, we can say it's the newest version of HTML 4.0.1 and XHTML 2.0. Here, XHTML 2.0 is not being used by much of the people. We only know about XHTML 1.0. So the clear definition of HTML5 would be, it's a language for structuring and presenting content for the World Wide Web. We know since 1990 we are using the HTML, and it was the first release in 1990, and now we are in HTML5, which is a fifth revision, which is still under development. So what is the aim of HTML5? To improve the language with support of the latest multimedia while keeping it easily readable and consistable and understood by both computers and devices. And what are the features of HTML5? In HTML5, you can write both HTML and XHTML both in a single language. So we can state that a single markup language that can be written in either HTML or XHTML syntax. It is an introduced HTML5 have introduced Application Programming Interfaces API for web applications, which enables and also able to run on low process devices such as smartphones, tablets, mobiles, and extra. So the main features in HTML5 we can observe new structure, new elements, dynamic pages, support, and lots more. So the definition of HTML5 we know previously, and the main conclusion of the feature are HTML5, a new core technology of the internet originally proposed by Opera but not W3C. So we can hats off to the Opera developers who have made the developer life easier. Since the release of HTML in 2004 by W3C, and there was no attention what the world needs. So in this time, a new group called WH80WG, the full form is Web Hypertext Application Technology Working Group, devoted to the evolution of the web, that is called new HTML5. The HTML5, it's a working group which includes AOL, Apple, Google, IBM, Microsoft, Mozilla, Nokia, Opera, and many hundred of other vendors join into this WH80WG group, and they combine and building this HTML5. So I hope that you have better understood what's HTML5. So what would be the conclusion then? HTML5 is not equal to CSS3, or HTML5 is not equal to JavaScript or jQuery, the new trends which have been implemented in HTML5. So we can say that HTML5 is always equal to HTML5. So HTML5 is HTML, but it's by all the means, it's the next version of HTML. So friends, if you're still confused, you need to dig deeper and simply remember always that HTML5 is equal to HTML. So there is a creative graphical representation about what is HTML5 at the link here given. And I will share with the document with you once the presentation has been completed. So let's go to this next slide. That is, what is the history and what is the history of HTML5 and when it was born. HTML5, which was earlier developed in 1990, and now we are in 2012. So from where we have started and now where we are, this graph represents which year we have the HTML group, W3C group have released one version after one. Here you can see the graph representation of HTML 2.0, and here a lot of space, that is HTML 4.0.1, which was released in 2004. And meanwhile you can see an XHTML 1.0 to 1.1 have been grown, and XHTML basic to XHTML basic 1.1. And in the top, if you see, they have implemented the flashlight 1.0 and 2.1 in the XHTML version itself. So we have XHTML 2.0, but it was not mainly focused, and it is not released to the public much, and it was not also used many, because meanwhile we have W3C, WH group have announced HTML5 a new version. So let us go to detail. So WH80WG began work on the new standards in 2004, when W3C was focusing on future developments of XHTML 2.0 and HTML 4.0.1 had not been updated since 2000. So W3C and WH80WG group both currently working together on the development of HTML5, and they have full stop HTML 2.0 and HTML 4.0.1 next standards. And when it was focused in media, and when it reached to the more people in number, so it was highlighted in media on April 2010, after Apple Inc. CEO Steve Jobs issued a public letter called Thoughts on Flash. it was in public meeting, which stating that Flash is no longer necessary and that new open standards created in mobile era such as HTML5 will always win. So then next, after his speech in April 2010, in November 2011, Adobe announced to the public that it will discontinue the development of Flash for mobile devices and reorient its efforts in developing the tools using HTML5 itself. So the first public draft of the specifications released on 22nd January 2008, where W3C and WH80WG group both discussed and released a first draft that what are the new tags, new things to be implemented in HTML5, which was released on January 22nd, 2008. We know that Ian Hickson of Google is the editor of HTML5. HTML5 was still at working draft stage, and we guessed that 100% would complete in 2022 or later. This was the statement which was given by WH80WG group in the meeting, that so many of the new tags are still in development, and 2012 they complete, they release W3 HTML5 under W3C group, and where the browsers have to perfectly maintain their standards. So in the bottom you can also see a funny representation about the history of HTML5. And let's go to the next slide. What are the new elements in HTML5? We have seen more new, around 38 to 40 new tags have been in HTML5, and also a few tags, maybe not less than 10, have been removed in HTML 4.0.1, which should not include in HTML5 when you develop. So what are the new elements that may be in markup, media, canvas, form, new attributes that were in input attributes they have implemented? So in this tag cloud, you can see different tags here, and let us concentrate on few tags that which are necessary for development of a layout. Let us take a home page here. So for every home page, for every website, we need a HTML, a header, a footer, and a content part. So if you see this tag cloud, you can see a header tag and footer and content, aside, navigation, and the main thing is nav. A new tag has been involved in HTML5, that is nav. So friends, the main tags which we include or which we generally use in HTML5 are header, navigation, content, and footer, and there the left strip and right strip will be included in a block called aside. And also you can see a brief explanation about each element at the below link. I will share with you. And so let's go to the differences. What are the differences from HTML5 and HTML4? So in most of the computers, some versions may still use the older versions of Macromedia, that may be Dreamweaver 8 or Dreamweaver MX. So you need to go for standards like the newer versions of Dreamweaver. If you are using editor for HTML, then you should go for CSS3 or CS5, the latest versions. So the way I'm specifically saying the versions of the Dreamweaver, why? Because so if you press Ctrl+N, the Dreamweaver will automatically generate a basic code. So you need to check whether the code, the first line, is correct or not. If you are developing a HTML5 website, it should be doc type HTML, but not doc type HTML space public quote start w3c and etc. .loose.dtt. So here most of the people will never look into this doc type, and when we submit our project, the client says this is not the version I have asked. So you specifically you need to check the doc type when you develop a website as per the client requirements, whether it's HTML4 or 4.0.1 or HTML5. So if you compare, the left one is HTML4 and right one is HTML5. So if you see the lines of code and the words which are used and the new tags that used in HTML4 are lesser than HTML5. So HTML5 is all about reducing the new tags and implementing new elements, etc. First, you need to check out whether the doc type space HTML is only for HTML5. You should not write there is no strict or there is no transitional, which are the two types of HTML documents we have in HTML 4.0.1 but not in HTML5. So in HTML5 there will be no 4.0.1 strict or transitional, just HTML. And next, if you see HTML, and here directory LTR is nothing but the layout will be aligned to left, and if it isn't right, it will be another RTR will be, and here the language is English, which is specified in the HTML tag itself. And next, header is common, and also if you observe the next line, that is meta http dash equivalent is equal to content type, content is equal to text HTML, char set, UTF-8, etc. So here in HTML5, which is specified in one word, that is meta tag char set is equal to UTF-8 itself. So title is common for everything, and head is closed. From here we start the layout structure. If you see in HTML4, we have a div ID is equal to header, and where the header content will be included. And in the HTML5, if you see, we just have a new tag, that is header. And also the same repeats for navigation, and here in HTML5 we have nav. And if you see here div ID content in HTML4, where we have div ID is equal to content, but where this is the main structure of our layout, inside these tags we have to we can add divs like how we did in HTML4. And if you go down, you can see div ID is equal to left strip, but here we have a new tag called aside, where the left strip will be included, and you can give ID or class anything to the aside. And also coming to the right strip, here div ID is equal to right strip, and here in HTML5 we have article. And next to that, div ID is equal to footer. In HTML5 we have a direct tag called footer. So if you observe all these differences from HTML4 and 5, you can observe that there is a less code and also easy to use. Why? Because if the website is going for a big pages, maybe around 500 to 1000, so if you change at one tag, here div ID is equal to header, so we write in style sheet ID header. But here we don't need to write any ID or class in style sheet. We can just directly go for header. In a website, we will have only one header, so this code should not repeat again in your HTML5 layout or in your code. And coming to the next slide. So what are the advantages of HTML5 and why you should adopt it? So HTML5 is still under development. It have been not certified by W3C to compulsory use. So let us question about ourselves. What are the advantages and why we should adopt it? And the first thing you can observe from before slide, that is the code structure. We have a new structural elements instead of div tags to create the templates. That the result will be a clean and tight and more organized code. So that is nothing but finally a cleaner markup and improved code with improved semantics. And the next thing, which is a main advantage, is richer media elements. That is direct tags for audio and video plugins. You can stream audio and video without any third-party plugins such as Flash. You can create your own player controls that are fully programmed with JavaScript. So if you want to, before in HTML4 and in the older versions of HTML, if you want to place a video tag, we use Flash or place the iframe code of YouTube or any other players. We need to copy the code and implement in our HTML. But HTML5 have its own tags which we can implement directly in our HTML5 by just writing open bracket and video, and also the same follows for audio also. And not only inserting the audio and video file in your page, you can even control the plugin player controls. Like if you need to add a different icon for pause, different icon for stop, different icon for volume symbol, you can purely customize from the plugins in HTML5. And also the smarter forms, the form types and elements help you the information which is entered is accurate. No need to run additional scripts for checking validation. So this is automatically include loading the speed and loading time, and the user experience will enhance. So let's give me an explanation on the smart forms. So before we have an submit form in contact us page. So if we have a name tag which is a label, and next to that we will have a text box. So if user entering numbers after the form submit, then we used to write some JavaScript to alert the user that you have not entered the name, that you have entered numbers. The same way for phone number and same way for email. So here in HTML5 we have new input types, so there is no need to write any JavaScript functions to check whether the form entered by the person or by spam. So it automatically checks whether entered is in correct form or not. So no need to write JavaScript or no need to write jQuery. So this is automatically includes the loading time. It speeds up the loading time. The user experience will be enhanced. So, and coming to the next point, local storage. The data can be accessed to support the web application, and it can even be accessed when the client is disconnected from a short period of time. There are methodologies for storing data, and session storage, local storage, and database storage in HTML5. The explanation about the local data storage is, suppose when we are making a payment, if we buy from an eBay or any website that we are buying a product, and the product have been added to our cart, and when the user submit to the make a payment, if the network disconnects, and here HTML5 will save the data storage, and it stores the data locally and it connects. So when there is no internet down, if the internet is down, you are offline. So HTML5 will storage the data locally and also the database storage. And next, if we go for games, most of the sites which are in game sites were built in HTML5, and the main advantage for the HTML5 is it's good for mobile devices. It's the only solution for fast applications that will be across all mobile devices. HTML5 is supported in all mobile browsers and all iPads, notebooks, etc. So here the statement that what are the advantages of HTML5 the statement is functionality is built into the browser. So there are lots more to know about HTML5. So you can start use HTML5 in your designs right now. And let's move to the next slide. That is, what are the main disadvantages of HTML5? So when compared with the advantages and the disadvantages are not much, but there are some few disadvantages in HTML5. That is, when you implement audio tag, video tag, or input type form validations called email, phone number, etc., it automatically generates a JavaScript code. So now we are using jQuery in most of the websites than JavaScript. So here the JavaScript is main point to be concluded or included that this is a disadvantage. And as W3C have not yet given certify that HTML5 is complete, so friends start use HTML5. So there is no certificate that from W3C. So even browsers are building HTML5 support in their browsers. So once W3C releases that it should be compulsory implemented in browsers, so That should definitely be an plus point for all support in all browsers. So if, right now, if you check IE6 and IE7 and even IE8, HTML5 is still not supported. So there is no true standard from one browser to another. And the native apps run faster than HTML5 based web apps. So what is native apps? Native apps are nothing but which are designed to run in the computer environment, that is in the machine language and OS, that runs by itself, such as using Java applet. So this is called native apps. So for achieving UI across the devices and lack of resources to efficiently render heavy CSS animations. So what is here the heavy CSS3 animations? That is, if you want to implement an object like circle, rectangle, or any thing that you need to be shown by CSS3. So if you need to write CSS3, which automatically generates a few lines that are not equal to CSS2. That is nothing but when compared to CSS2 and CSS3, there are new tags have been involved in CSS3, and if you want to write a rectangle, you can draw directly by using CSS3, and lots more shapes can be used or written by CSS3. So if this is a large lines of code, so this is heavy for the CSS3 animation tags, and of course, and last it's you and of course clients. Why? Because clients still need IE6 support. More 7.7% of the world still using IE6, which was even released in 2001. It's almost 11 years, but still many who have not upgraded. So friends, let's assume that within a short period of time, it reaches to 0%, and developers should definitely celebrate that moment, because still clients need support for IE6 and IE7, and they still ask us to fix IE6 and 7 issues. So you should make your clients that IE6 have been 10 years old, so ask them to upgrade themselves or to use the new technologies. And coming to the browser support, how to make HTML5 compatible with all browsers? HTML5 is still not supported by IE6, 7 and 8, but IE8 and IE7 allows some of the new tags like header and footer, and then some of the few tags are allowed by or supported by HTML in IE7 and 6. So how to make all the browsers compatible? So making HTML5 elements to display block which works in IE7 and 8. Suppose if you add a header tag and check out in, if you write header, footer and content and check out in IE7, you can see that both the elements which you written in header, footer and content will display one by one. But header is a block element, even footer is a block element, and content is a block element. So IE7 and IE8 will display them as display block inline, but we need to make them as display block. So in bottom you can see a script that is, if IE less than IE9, we are asking, we are implementing a .js file. .js file, which makes, if you implement the JS file, it automatically enables the HTML5 new tags and make them as display block. So there is no need to write display block for every element which you write in CSS. So this was this JavaScript was developed by John Neal and Afarkas, who made IE actually print the display inline block as block elements. And the next slide is HTML5 with CSS3, which takes your design to another level, giving much and a rich look and feel, and which also gives you more power and more usability also. So many common tasks are now simplified by using HTML5 and CSS3. HTML5 with the combination of CSS3 brings new features which were not yet supported fully, but it's good to learn the new technologies to use. if you know that iPhone 4 rendered with no images. iPhone 4 is rendered completely using HTML5 and CSS3, and there are no images. It's just HTML5 and CSS3. So this is a good start. And also, it's one thing. It's one thing to know the theory is. It's another thing to put this theory into practice. Learn by doing. Develop with tomorrow's standards today itself. So no need to wait until the HTML5 was released by W3C. So start using HTML5. And what are the new cool things that have been implemented in CSS3, like font face, rounded corners, box shadow, text shadow, multiple backgrounds, border images, opacity, etc. So in HTML4, if the designer uses an uncompatible and unbrowser font, so there is no, we just make them as images and call them in HTML file. But in HTML5 and with using CSS3, you can convert the TTF font to a web compatible font. We have many websites like Font Squirrel where you can convert the TTF font to different versions of font, which gives you a zip file which will be having 4 different formats of font that you need to be copied into your HTML folder structure, and you just need to call just the font face like Mirai Pro, etc. So by writing that font face, you simply get the effect like how the designer have designed the header tag or title tags in different non-web browser compatible fonts. So any font now with using of CSS3, you can make it as a web compatible. And also coming to the rounded corners, in HTML in older versions, we use it to save them. If a box have 4 corners, we use it to save them as 4 images of taking the 4 corners as 5 by 5 or 10 by 10 pixels. So by using CSS3, you can directly give how much round shape we want. It may be a 5 pixels of radius, it may be 10 pixels of radius. And also not only adding the corners to the box, you can even control this rounded corners. Like if you want only left, you can even add only the left value, and if you want only the right, you can add the right, and if you need only top and right, we can customize like how in which side we want the corner and which side we don't want. And also the box shadow, which is nothing but giving a shadow to the box. Most of the if you observe, if there is a shadow in Photoshop which was in before, we use it to completely save it as an image and call it as a background. But here in CSS3 we can directly add this box shadow value, which gives you a shadow effect around the div and around that particular. Even it's also for text shadow also. If there is a text shadow designed in Photoshop, before we use it to save it as an image. Why? Because clients always ask us to give how the Photoshop layout is. So we can't say them that text shadow cannot be used in CSS or implemented by our CSS. So we used to save them as images in the older versions, but now in CSS3 we can add a text shadow at the same time a value that how much distance the text shadow should go. And also here multiple backgrounds. In CSS2 we can only add one background at one time, but here in CSS3 we can add different backgrounds. So this is a huge advantage. So let us compare here. If there is a background layout and we need to call a large image in the background of body tag, and at the same time we need to add another image which having a shadow. Here the background should stretch to the computer, whatever the screen of the computer is. But the image which you add in the top should not move. It should be centered to your screen. So if you want to, here there are 2 backgrounds. So what we generally do, we just in the body tag we write a background of the layout, and next we implement another div and call this top image. But in CSS3 we can add multiple backgrounds to a particular element. So this is a huge advantage. And even border images, if the designer have used images for borders, so you can directly call your images in via CSS. And the next thing is opacity. if you write opacity 0.2 in CSS2 W3C, when you check our validating our CSS file, it shows an error that opacity is not in CSS2 tag. But in CSS3, opacity have also been included, and there are lots more advantages when you use HTML5 with the combination of CSS3, and which gives you much look and feel. At the same time, you can easily customize your layout within a short span of time. And if we go to the next slide, so here also one more thing to note that CSS3 is also not at supported by all browsers. So even for support of CSS3 tags also, we need to implement, or we need to make it compatible with all browsers. So what we need to for compatible of CSS3 in all browsers? So there is an application called CSS3 Pi, which gives you CSS3 support in all IE browsers. So why here I am specifically mentioning IE, because generally we get issues or issues and support, only we get issues in IE. So specifically CSS3 is still, most of the browsers are giving validation or support for CSS3, but except IE, like IE7 and IE8. Even though IE6 have been 12 years back, still 7.7% of the world are using IE6. So here the CSS3 Pi is nothing but which gives you support all IE browsers, including IE6, 7 and 8. Of course IE9 is an HTML5 and CSS3 enabled. And how to write an CSS3 file for IE. So friends, we need to write a separate style sheet for IE. You should not include hacks or tags, like if you add a full stop before the property element, it supports only in IE7. Something we have hacks for exclusively for IE, but if you need to look better, it's better to write a new style sheet for IE. That here we can see a source code called if less than IE9, call this IE.css. So what this IE.css will be? Suppose for the header tag, you have an rounded corners to be implemented, or text shadow to be implemented, or box shadow. So in general style sheet, we just add in CSS we add header and box shadow something value, and then what you need to do to support this CSS3 tag in all browsers, go to IE.css that you write and just call that element only, that is just write header, flower brackets open and close, just write position relative. So you can the position relative to be added for IE.css, and also the pi.htc. These two tags are compulsory, which you need to add in IE.css, which gives you support in all IE browsers. So in this style sheet, add the same name of the selector you have written in common style sheet and add like below. That is giving a path to the HTC file. So you can download the spy.htc file from their website, and you need to place it in your HTML folder structure and give path where the HTC file is located, and then you in the IE.css you need to add this behavior and position related. And so friends, we have HTML5 CSS3 is being using many people, and we have observed a lot of websites are developed in HTML5 and CSS3. Like if you check the latest version of Gmail, of course all the Google apps which are using HTML5 and CSS3, and also you don't see before everything is an icon based. There are no buttons. So the web is changing, and if you see YouTube, Gmail, and Google Plus. If you see Google Plus, there are lots of animations that you can observe in Google Plus. So these are all can be achieved by HTML5 and CSS3. So here I have specified some of the reference links for you for HTML5 and CSS3. HTML5 Rocks is the best website that you can see demos demos, how it works and what are the how you need to implement it, how you need to add it, which is an Google initiative that Google have started. It's HTML5 rocks, and also even Google have been announced publicly that it is stopping support for its apps for iOS 6 also. And if you, the next thing is, does your browser support HTML5? If you open that website in your browser, it lets you know that the browser, which tags support that browser. Suppose if you go for Firefox, it will shows you a list of percentage that header is supportable in Firefox, and if you open the same in IE, it will say that only few tags are supported by your browser. It's nothing but it will test your browser that how many tags of HTML5 and CSS3 will support. And if you see next, you can see a lot of demos for HTML5 for each cell tag. And if you want to know about CSS3 more, you can visit CSS3 info and CSS3 files and CSS3.com. And if you want to know the statistics of HTML5 and CSS3, you can visit findmeby.ip.com, which is nothing but each day this WHWTG group releases one by one after its testing functionality. So you can check it out whether from which day to day the new tags have been tested and it have been publicly they can use it. And the last thing is very interesting, that is in general clients use it to say that in my browser it's not working. So friends, with fmbib.com you can resolve it simply. So what all the way you need to do is send this URL and you can get the result. So which is nothing but it will ask, it will enable, it will give you an IP to you, and if you enter the IP, it will shows you that in which browser the client have been tested that page. So you can evenly say to them that HTML5 is not supported in your browser, something like that. And you can also share find an interesting article at articlebase.com. And so friends, this is the session on the HTML5 and CSS3. So I thank all of you for joining here and making it a grand success. So friends, if you need any questions, so you can paste me in, you can ask me in the questions part. And if you can also follow me, or you can email me also if you have any questions. So I will be available here for another 10 to 15 minutes to give all of your answers. Thanks, friends, for joining the session.
The questions are already shared with you. Hello, can you see the questions?
Hello.
Hello, Mr. Sandeep. Can you see the questions in the questions pan?
Yeah, I'm seeing it. Yeah.
Okay, fine.
So can I mute my? I think now you are the presenter, right?
You're still the presenter. Just take up the questions one by one. Read out the question along with the name of the person who has asked.
Yeah.
And answer the question.
Okay. Yeah. Friends, I have a question from Jitendra Vyas that, I mean, is JavaScript knowledge required to use all the aspects of HTML5? yeah, you should definitely need basic JavaScript to implement. I mean, if you need to add or adjust any elements in JavaScript which were automatically built in HTML5, it should definitely know the basic versions of basic knowledge in Java. And I have one more question from Manas, that is HTML5 used for designing mobile UI? Yes, definitely. HTML5 will definitely support all mobile browsers. So you start going using HTML5 and CSS3. There is no doubt that any browser is supporting HTML5. So you can start using HTML5 in CSS3. I have one more question from Strav, says that can I use section tag for content? Here, what is the section tag is nothing but which is almost equal to a div, but we can't directly use a section tag for using a main content part. First write a div ID content, and then inside it you need to write an aside or an article, and inside that you can add a section. A section is nothing but a block which is almost equal to a div. I have a question from Anil Kumar, that he is stating that is there a browser that we can use to test the HTML5 code? Yes, Mozilla Firefox is a perfect browser which supports all the HTML5 tags. So you can just start coding in Dreamweaver, writing HTML5 tags, and you can test in Firefox that it is a pure HTML5 compatible browser. And we have another question from Subbu. As you mentioned, for the input tag in HTML5 will generate the JavaScript. I want to use my own JavaScript validation for the input tags or any other controls in HTML5. If yes, how can I implement? Automatically HTML5 will build the JavaScript whenever you write a new tag like audio, video, or input type email, input type phone number, input type date. So it automatically generates a code. So you can customize it. If you know JavaScript, you can definitely customize it. Here I have a question from Sundarajan, that will HTML5 support CSS2 for making animation? No friend, you compulsory need to use CSS3 for animation effects. I have a question from Dharmendra that is there anything specific we need to install for HTML5 or browser? So friend, there is no need to install anything in your browser. Browser is an element where whatever we write, it shows. HTML5 is nothing but what you write is what you get in the browsers. I have a question from Ravi that he is asking that is HTML5 is a replacement for Flash. It's not a replacement of Flash, but everything almost 50% whatever you get from Flash is supported by HTML5 along with jQuery. So of course, since from 1 or 2 years we are using Flash very less, and almost jQuery is a main part which have been thrown Flash aside, and everyone is using jQuery. I have a question from Arul Raj. Is he stating that are there any tools to convert HTML4 and 5? Here there are no converters which can convert your HTML4 to HTML5. So you need to write everything by manually. I have a question from Jitendra that he's stating that if we use that Shiv JavaScript file, so still we need to write display block. No, friend, there is no need to write display block in CSS if you call the JS file. I have a question from Hemant that he is asking, is there any script that can be used to support full CSS3 in older browsers? Yeah, we have that CSS3 Pi, which gives you support in all browsers. I have a question from Sahir Nadeem that he is asking, the code which is written in HTML5, does it need to be modified or viewable in mobile devices, or the same code can be used? Yes, you can, it is the same code. So friends, I'm unmuting my as the time have been completed, but I am happy to post the answers in the chat so you can check it out. Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Hello? Mr. Sandeep, can you hear me? Hello?
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Hello.
There are few more questions. If see if you can answer. Otherwise, we will conclude the session.
Yeah, I'm answering one by one. So just I have muted my speak.
Okay, fine.
Fine. Thank you.
Hello. Hello.
Hello? Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I think we have already exceeded the session by 5 minutes. So
Okay. Yeah,
if
you
you
can
want to take up
close the session.
one or two more questions, then fine. Else we can conclude the session now.
Yeah, you can close the session.
Okay. So
Thank you.
fine. Thanks, Sandeep, for your informative session on HTML5. It was indeed an enlightening session. I would also like to thank our participants for their support in making this webinar a huge success. The recording of this webinar will be available on techgeek.com by tomorrow. Gentlemen, TechGeek announces webinar series on cloud computing starting tomorrow, that is 10th Jan 2012. Topic for tomorrow's webinar is hands-on Windows Azure and building and deploying end-to-end applications. We will be having Mr. Sachin Prakash Sancheti, Principal Architect at Aditi Technologies, as our guest speaker. So see you all tomorrow. Thank you.